Hello. Welcome to Digital Hollywood. Hope you're enjoying it. My name is Terry Beanstalk. Been moderating these panels for almost since the beginning of Digital Hollywood. What I've always found is you have a great opportunity here. You're here for a reason. You have your business issues that have come up. We're in a very fast-moving, evolving industry, or series of industries, and problems are coming up a lot faster than solutions. And today we have an opportunity to talk to some of the leading experts in all these industries to talk about digital product and over-the-top programming. So what I'd like to encourage you is, we're here for you, you're not here for us. So feel free to ask questions, feel free to interrupt. I always tell my panelists, feel free to argue with each other or disagree with each other, because that's the most interesting thing. No one's allowed to do a PowerPoint because they're boring. Everyone will tell you who they are, what they do, because that'll give you some context of where they're coming from. But I'm as interested in the audience as I am in the panelists. I know what the panelists do. I don't know what you folks do. So I'm going to ask you, what do you guys do? Who's in advertising? Distribution? Content creation? Technology? What am I forgetting? Did I say marketing? Marketing? Branding? Okay, so we have a diverse group, which is great. I'll just start with you, JR. Why don't you talk about who you are and what you do?
Hi, I'm JR Griffin. I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing and Business Development at Fremantle Media North America. We're one of the largest independent production companies in the world. We have offices in over 30 countries. We do about 10,000 hours of TV a year and have over 40 worldwide formats. You know us best in America from our big competition shows like America's Got Talent, American Idol, X Factor, game shows like Family Feud, Price is Right, Let's Make a Deal, Match Game, To Tell the Truth, Celebrity Family Feud, a bunch of stuff. We're getting into scripted programming. We have a show premiering on Starz next year called American Gods. And I handle the digital marketing, social media, finding revenue in the digital space for all of our shows and brands.
Samir?
Hi, my name is Samir. I'm Chief Architect at Fandango. Fandango, obviously, you know from the ticketing sales, but also we have the Fandango Now brand, which is an over-the-top VOD and EST business. We also own the Rotten Tomatoes brand, and we've been making a lot of custom content, short-form content that we've been monetizing on YouTube and other sites. And so my role is building out the platform that powers it all, integrating with advertising partners and device manufacturers to build out the platform.
Caroline?
Hi, I'm Caroline Wilson. I'm the VP of Integrated Marketing at Pop Network, formerly TV Guide Networks. We're in 80 million homes distributed across all major carriers. My role is to find innovative and creative ways for marketers and advertisers to get their message out on our network.
Pablo?
Hi, my name is Pablo Argon. I represent the technology side. I'm at Ericsson, and we create enterprise software for content distribution. So mostly big telcos, operators, satellite operators, and we provide technology for the content packaging, compression, storage, distribution, and even the applications to render that from set-top boxes to different form factor devices. So big brands like AT&T, Uverse, Verizon, Deutsche Telekom, I mean, they're customers of ours at some type of component. We have about 60 plus commercial deployments. I work in the strategy team directly for the CTO of the TV and media platform business unit. And I'm replacing Eric Ramber actually today, who couldn't be with us because he's traveling to meet one customer. So my role in the strategy team is I'm a security architect. So I work a lot with the Hollywood industry to make sure that the level of robustness of our platforms meet the standards for premium content distribution and the different business models that they want to, put in place for their content. So.
Jen?
My name is Jen Garcia Allen. I work for a Los Angeles-based media and technology company called Whale Rock Industries. I am the executive editor overseeing the Kardashian and Jenner apps. And we'll be adding another celebrity app to our profile, our portfolio, next month. But, we have our hand in television, in film, but most recently we've really been focusing on these apps. We're big, obviously, on content creation, so we also handle brands like Mom.me, Purple Clover, Wonderwall, but the app business is what I do, and obviously content creation and editorial and sort of running those businesses is my day-to-day.
Thank you. John?
I'm John Solomon. I'm the Chief Creative Officer for Circa, a brand new brand that entered the market about 12 weeks ago. We're owned by the Sinclair Broadcast Group, which is the largest television owner in the country, 173 stations, 44.3 million homes. Our mission was to create short-form, mobile-centric, video-centric news and entertainment for millennials. And we're at the 12-week mark. We've reached about 420 million people across our platforms and done about 200 million video streams. And we're just beginning to experiment with crossing over into television with our content. And I think our unique play is that we took all of our news and our entertainment content and we socialized it first. So our primary mission is what will work in a social environment first, and then we work back to the other platforms.
Well, what should we talk about first? Because there's a lot of things to cover. Let's talk about history. Some of you come from traditional media. I do. I'm from the cable. By the way, I was general counsel of Comcast Cable. I was in charge of the video on demand platform, helped launch and fostered the early days of both digital phone and digital the online platform, as well as then started a mobile marketing company, and have been involved in a lot of the new media applications. It's been an interesting ride for those of us who've been in from the traditional media days. What are the challenges that you've been seeing and moving from traditional media to the digital media? And then we'll talk about digital media per se, but what are the challenges of moving a company from an old from the old thinking to new thinking? John, you want to start?
Sure.
You've been in every aspect of this.
I have been around a long time, yeah. So I grew up in the AP wire service and worked my way through newspapers and then into new media at the end of my career here. And, I think the biggest challenge is an inertia within the media industry to listen to what their audience is telling them. Our audiences know what they want. They know where they want it. They know how they want it. But often our business models and our preconceptions don't match that. And so you fight an uphill stream if you're trying to be a disruptor. But there's a clear trend line today that we see in every aspect of our content, and that is people want to consume first on mobile. We've become a mobile world, and I think in the next couple of years, your mobile phone will become your DVR as well. And they want to consume not necessarily on favored brands, but across multiple brands. Brand loyalty has shrunk, but content consumption has grown. And so being able to reach people on the platform that they like, whether it's Facebook, your own app, OTT, you have to be ready to compete on all those fields, and you need to be quick and fast and read your data. And I think if you do those things and you overcome the inertia, that's a very bright future for media.
Jen?
I totally agree. Couldn't have said it better myself. I came from traditional media. I was an editor at People Magazine for 10 years before I joined Whale Rock last year. One of the amazing things about the company is that they really think digital first and technology, obviously. So content creation is a huge part of what we do, but the market is saturated with content creation. So you have to also look at what else you can offer the audiences and how you can differentiate yourselves. And you also have to think, while I do believe that everyone's consuming things obviously mobile first, you have to think about all the different platforms and how else you can provide content to people. But yeah, I think the challenge in working for traditional media companies, Back in. I think one of the struggles with working for a traditional media company is also not moving as quickly as you should. Larger and more archaic companies tend to sort of sit on an idea, I think, for a little bit, and they're not acting as quickly as they should. No, of course. That's okay. But I think we all sort of need to trust our instincts and, again, look at the data and just look at how the consumer wants not only their content, but how they want to receive it. And you kind of just need to take a leap of faith and roll with that a little bit.
Joseph, I want to welcome you.
Sorry about that. Sorry I'm late. Joe
Is it-
Hodorowitz. Yeah, I was sent around on your
Joseph, why don't
Sorry
you
about
tell everyone who you are and what you do?
So my name's Joe Hodorowitz. I'm a talent manager at Studio 71. We're a multi-channel network servicing YouTube content creators specifically, as well as Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. We're creating original content for various platforms, as well as migrating formats from digital to traditional platforms as well.
Even on interim platforms like video on demand, I consider an interim platform. So it bridges, sort of, was supposed to bridge the gap between traditional cable television streaming to internet delivered, which wasn't available yet. What did you, the biggest problem we always saw, and I think it's still a problem, is discoverability, and helping people find what they wanted to watch in a logical and a quick fashion. Is that still a problem? What do you see as a solution for that, or is there a solution?
I think discoverability, we exist now in a time where YouTube is giving, such a great platform for many different content creators. I think a commitment to programming is key. Maintaining and treating, for instance, the way we work with our talent, whether it's an organization or a singular individual, approach YouTube like a mini television network. That's really what we preach to them. And programming is then a way to rise in the algorithm, particularly on YouTube. YouTube in particular is looking for people who are committing to always-on programming, evergreen in a way. I know at times that puts people at a detriment because the production quality can't be as high, but if you can really put yourself out there in a way that you're branding yourself very clearly, if you're committing to a schedule and you're really adamant in the way that you're introducing your audience in regular fashion to content and formats that are new and emerging and follow trends, I think that really does help people to discover the content, particularly on YouTube.
So Caroline, as a new media person with over-the-top programming, what are the challenges you face on getting people to know you're there, know how to discover you, and to come back?
Right. So I represent a whale, I guess, on this panel because I'm on the cable network side, right? So Pop Network, old TV Guide network. So we're a traditional cable channel. I'm actually new to the team as well. So people always ask, like, why did you go to a TV network? Clearly, everybody's mobile, digital first. There's a strong story that people are absorbing content on that platform. What's up? So I will answer. So the reason I went is I think what's really important, and I think hopefully I'd have more people agreeing with me than disagreeing with me, is there used to be a scarcity of content, right? And now there's an abundance of distribution. So with the abundance of distribution became an abundance of content. And there's an overwhelming access to whatever content that people want to view. And so I think that there are still people, consumers at large, that love a well-curated experience. And that goes back to the original question of, how do you find content? How do you program it? How do you make sure you're getting your content in front of people? And I think that comes down to making smart, creative people be in charge of kind of defining what it is that people should be seeing, could be seeing, what's provocative, what's interesting, what's relevant. And I think that's really what a cable network does. I think if you talk to many, whether it's MCNs or now they're turning into agencies, studios, even app developers, the aspiration is still to get to a larger distribution, a larger audience, and usually that means going to the TV network side. And I think there's some really interesting things that we start to see when you start to see that type of approach to, even the digital space. They are consolidating and figuring out ways to make partnerships with major networks. So look at NBCU putting $200 million into Vox, putting $200 million into BuzzFeed, Disney putting $400 million into Vice, Disney and Vice. That's really interesting. So you start to see these consolidations and big TV networks starting to take on stronger roles in the digital space. And at the end of the day, even YouTube stars say their aspiration is to be a TV network star. So, it's a long-winded answer to say that I think, in order to have smart, savvy programming put in front of people, you need smart, savvy people making those decisions and kind of curating an experience for consumers, because I don't think that'll ever go away. I don't think the desire for consumers to see a nicely curated, what will I be interested in next? Like, even Netflix hasn't gotten it down just yet. You still have to scroll through to figure it out. I think that's where we're going. That personalization is going to increase, and I still think there's titans of industry who know how to create that experience.
Pablo, you want to comment?
Yeah, I want to just add on what Carolyn was saying, because from a technology provider, the biggest challenge we have today is the fragmentation on the endpoints that we have for people consuming content, and the expectation that these consumers have on being able to consume the content everywhere and anywhere. And maintaining a good user experience across all those devices is a huge challenge. Now, the other thing that we are working very strongly right now is personalization, and that ties into the discoverability of the content. In the past, we didn't have enough data. Today, we have too much data. So what do you do with that, and how do you use in a meaningful way to help people find the content? So things that we do on our platform is, when you're watching the big screen, most people are also having a secondary screen. So how do you have a meaningful interaction between the big screen and the small screen, and present personal information to the small screen with respect to the content that everyone is sharing, and thinking about through those scenarios and how to use data to be more smart about advertisement and relevance of the content.
That's a great question. JR?
I always thought the person who's going to make the most money out of all of us is the person who does that user experience perfectly for all the content that's out there, and no one's gotten it totally right yet. But I was thinking about the challenges you guys were talking about. I came from the network side as well, for E-Style and then G4 Networks, and it was all about getting people to watch the network. And I just remember a couple years ago, now I'm on the production side, we sell our TV shows to networks. 2 years ago, we had the argument of, do we put this content on YouTube after the West Coast air of this show, or do we do it after East Coast air? And we're getting beat on YouTube. People were putting our content up before we were doing it. So these older models, you just sort of have to disrupt them and make sure it's going to, I spent a lot of time telling people it's going to be okay, right? We're not going to break the bank. It's not going to ruin the show. It's going to help lift everything. And we have premium content we're dealing with, so we have to treat it properly, make sure it's on all the right platforms in the right way, and it's where everybody wants to get it there first before somebody else gets it there.
Samir, what do we do with the consumer on the consumer side?
Agreed. It's all about the speed and thanks. It's all about the speed in which we publish this content, as you said, JR. It really is like getting to the medium which people use the most. So YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, all of those are where people are looking for content. So what we do is we use technology to help publish that content out. So we spend a lot of money and energy in building the right tools. We can publish paid premium content and also short form as well. So it's all about speed. And I agree with Pablo about the recommendation engines and algorithms. That's a big piece as well that we're working on. So
With the proliferation of platforms on which content is now being viewed, not just talked about. I mean, think of Facebook. It used to just be a place you talk about content, you use it to discover content or to recommend content. It's now being used heavily as a platform for content. How are those services? How are those platforms changing what you're doing in the mix?
I think, at least for us, we're using those platforms. So I think that's really important. Again, sort of speaking to people worrying about cannibalizing content, I think at the end of the day, the more eyes, the better. So first, you want to create content that's shareable. The ultimate goal would be to have something that goes viral, and you're bringing more awareness to a brand and what you're doing. I think it's just important to realize that, at least in my view, I don't really see a huge cannibalization of content.
I see it lifting up. So we just came off of a great season of America's Got Talent, where we had a massive viral hit with singer Grace VanderWaal, who did like 175 million views across YouTube and Facebook. And we took that story and that information and fed it back into the show in real time. She's on the show, she's doing well because she was a viral sensation. Here are people covering her original songs, let's put that into the show. So we were able to take that digital content and feed it back into the narrative of the broadcast show. And ratings were at a, not an all-time high, but a 5-year high. We put out more content ever on digital platforms, so it's not cannibalizing, I think it's lifting.
Yeah, it's about using those other, especially social platforms, to, again, build brand awareness. Just put the content out there. So people used to see it as like a competition and just a competitive platform, but now I think it really needs to be part of your general media distribution strategy. You really can't ignore social, and I think some people still undervalue it, which is sort of surprising.
But there's, yes, sir.
Along the same topics of possibility of cannibalizing content and more eyes the better, et cetera, et cetera. For a long time, there's always been struggle for anyone who knows YouTube law and stuff like that, is with copyright infringement and across other platforms as well. So moving into the future, how do you plan to either use that to your advantage in terms of like limiting the system so you can actually get more eyes on your content, or making sure it does its job when someone's actually stealing your content? How do you see that ecosystem moving forward, and how are you kind of working within it?
I think there's two ways to look at it, and having a strong content ID, approach. It's whether you're claiming the content and you're running monetization on top of it, so you're allowing that content sometimes to exist in other ecosystems and simply making sure the monetization is funneled back to you, or you have an aggressive takedown approach and you really work with a strong asset ID sort of strategy to make sure that anytime your assets are recognized on other platforms in which you do not own or are approving that distribution, you're taking it down. So it's really, do you want further, distribution of your content in a way that is a bit unregulated and knowing that you're getting more exposure on a platform, or do you want to be very aggressive and make sure that you're taking it down, one by one as they come up? Scale.
And some of our deals with some networks, we have different arrangements with different networks on allowable user-generated content. And I think it's important to, if fans are excited about your content and they want to share it and put it out there, as long as you have the right policies in place and the tools in place to control it in some way or monetize against it, it's great, right? Because people are engaging in your stuff. You want them to talk about it, want them to be excited about it. If it's someone who's download or streaming your show and putting up there to run a small business, that's not the right thing. That's not a fan engagement. But
do you see this affecting virality in the future more heavily than it does now? Like, for example, something that might be aggressively taken down across the internet, whether it's a small snippet or an entire block. You never would have known, is that going to go viral? Is it going to be huge? Is it going to open up a whole new door for us? A lot of those, we see a lot of those scenarios where you're not really sure which is going to play out which way. How do you see that affecting the future of viral content?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on what you just said. That from the platform that we built, we create the different knobs for enforcing whatever you want, right? So we can put watermarking and allow us to down the stream identify the content and do whatever action you want, right? And the agreements most of the time say, well, this type of content is okay as long as we can monetize on top of that. And platforms like YouTube or other, they have detection mechanisms that you can basically go and claim your rights and monetize out of if it's someone else that put the video out there. So the tools exist, and it's up to them to decide, well, I want to take it down and take a legal action, or I just live with it and get a little cut. So
One of the biggest things that have changed in the content process, when I sat in my news meetings in the 1980s, it was a very old way of doing news. When we front end a story at Circa, we are thinking of 20 and 30 outlets at a time, and we're planning the content before the reporter ever goes out into the field or the entertainer goes out. What's going to go on Snapchat? What's going to go on Facebook? And you're thinking about rights entitlement. What can I use on Facebook? What I can't use on Facebook? What can I take from CNN? What can I do? But that front ending, if you begin to anticipate all the places where you might have that opportunity, including anticipating people who might be tempted to take your content because they know it's going to be funny. Maybe we're going to do a riff on Pizza Hut, so maybe we should call Pizza Hut and talk to them. If you do that front-end planning, you can kind of plan for the best ecosystem for something to go viral. And virality is just a matter of chance, right? You don't know what's going to happen until it happens. But the front-end change in newsrooms today is that people are beginning to think about publishing in 20 channels and not one. And I think that's been a fundamental change in our newsroom to think that way. And a great example, we had a piece of content, I think it did 30 million views in the last month. We put it out the first time on Facebook without any text on screen, and it was really dramatic stuff. It was a shoulder cam of an officer running through a hail of 175 bullets, rescuing a wounded woman and her children and pulling to safety. You can see the bullets flying by. You can hear it. You couldn't make a movie that was more dramatic than real life. Put it up, only got 20,000 views on Facebook. We could not understand it. Went back, put text on screen, 22, 23, 25, 50 million very quickly, or 30 million very quickly. And I think that was a learning lesson in our newsroom about thinking about each platform that you have to publish on. That text on screen took the same video, made it viral, because most people can only watch at work on silent mode, and that's the truth of our, that's what they're doing. All your employees are doing it.
That's such a good point, just not, you also have to think about each platform. So you can't just take a piece of content and think that it should live the same way on Snapchat, it should live the same way on Facebook, it should live the same way on web, mobile web, and app. You really have to be platform specific. So, I mean, it's something I've really learned over the last couple of years, but I think that's important and often overlooked.
And that's also been the kind of the biggest change as well for us is getting that data in. So, putting the tags in the right place to receive all of that data, analyze it, and give the ability for people to analyze that data to make decisions. And so being able to real time see what's going on with your videos, see what's happening in the market, like what's going viral, right? And sometimes you can either be forceful on takedowns or actually try and piggyback on that viral nature and kind of get ahead of it.
Going viral, I think we've all been asked, make a viral hit, right? You don't, it's like playing the lottery. You just have to be there and set it up so you can get those hits when it happens. And luckily, we have moments in our game shows and our competition shows that every season there's a couple, and you just have to be there and ready to get it out and then capitalize on it, and to the point, make sure the content is right for the platform.
I think that's just to layer on, I think that's important. In my world, for example, we're really working with longer form content. So original programming, 30 minutes, hour, serialized, et cetera. And, a lot of what's discussed obviously is short form content. But when thinking about long form content and trying to get that out there and get people to love it, et cetera, it's a longer tail. You have to, allow an audience to grow. And there's some strategies obviously involved in that. And virality is very important, but it's not going to be as quick or as measured as some of the short form content that people are naturally going to mobile for or for tablets for. So I think it's also going back to what everybody's saying is platform specific. Where is your programming showing up? Where is your content showing up? How are you keeping that in mind and making it accessible on the smaller platforms? But at the end of the day, if you're watching a longer original programming type thing, most people default to a bigger screen, TV. So how do you get the word out there, but then make them go to the TV and watch it? It's an interesting.
So do you work? So when you're creating content or contemplating new content, do you work backwards? Do you say, here are the platforms it'll be on, so here's how I'm going to create it? Or do you start at the front end and say, I'm creating content, but it has to work on multiple platforms? Is it one or the other, or?
I think it can work both ways.
Both ways, yeah. I think it depends on, at the end of the day, again, going back to my original point, great storytelling drives audiences. So I think, to try and get like a great writer like J.J. Abrams to say, okay, think about something for tablet. And then have him create something. It's kind of a backwards way for him. But if you say, okay, you've got carte blanche, let's think of something really interesting that will grab audiences, and he's allowed to go off and collaborate and think up of Westworld. Like obviously, that's not going to be a platform-specific exploration. So I think that's one way of looking at it. Again, in my lens of longer form content, I think it's story first, great storytelling, really important stories that need to get out there, and then. Once you have that, it's being smart and strategic about how you get the word out there on different platforms, the way people will absorb it. And then I'm sure, just as much as that works, the opposite works, right? Short form content, there could be, okay, I need to make a great mobile series, and that drives you to innovate and create something really awesome.
So when you are creating this type of content, is it are you now focusing differently on the type of content you're looking for, because some content is more amenable to do this with than other content, and is it stifling certain types of content categories?
No, we always sort of we chop up our long-form TV shows into short-form content that's right for the platform. But at the same time, we're looking at what's standalone digital content. And coming from the production side, it's not marketing content to get someone to go watch it on the network. It's the storytelling when the show's not on TV is more important to us than when it is on TV, because these are our brands. We want it to come back for season 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20. So what digital content can stand on its own that represents that brand properly? So we've done some investigation on what works, what do you not even have to watch the main show to care about this piece of digital content in this environment. And that's worked for us from the production point of view, because we're just producing more content for a different platform.
Anyone else?
Instead of constraining, I think it's liberating to be in this era right now. You can just take different forms of content and give it different spins in the channels that they are. I'm going to embarrass him, and I know because he's sitting right in the audience and he would never want me to shout him out, so I'm going to shout him out. But in the audience is Dave Zucker, one of the great Hollywood producers, and gave us all these great movies that we've laughed at. He's helping us incubate a humor team. And it's really liberating to think that you can do something on Snapchat and then do something live on Facebook, then do it a set piece that's going to go viral on Facebook, and maybe take all this and make a TV show someday. And I think the creative process has become more intriguing and there's more armaments to bring to the battlefield every day because of these channels. And a lot of people feel it as the biggest mistake in the profession is I think they see it as a weight on their shoulders. I think it's a liberation moment for the media. You just have to get out and think bigger and realize there's all different ways to do it. And you just watch the stuff Dave has done on our little Laughs channel. It's extraordinary to see humor change.
I'm David Zucker, and
I renounce that comment.
Jeff?
Just going on that point, I'll say, we're working with The Rock, and he's someone who came to us, and then right away we discussed how do we take your massive brand, your international, celebrity, and transform it into a short-form content approach. We're following him onto his movie sets. We're having him vlog daily like any other personality would. It's something really interesting to see a A-lister who can command any top dollar from a studio now looking at the YouTube platform and outside of Instagram now figuring out a way to stay always on and connected to his audience. And it's something that's been really unique and interesting now. I think that kind of opens the floodgates for many people, traditional and digital to go to traditional and traditional to come to digital and really grow and foster their brand.
So is it, we're back to sort of what we talked about originally. It's brand discoverability. Brand is more important than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, what The Rock is doing is what we're doing, with the Kardashian and Jenner family, and each of them having their own personal app and website. And these are some of the most famous women in the world, love them or hate them. People can't stop talking about them. But they have realized, that you have to go out to other platforms. And, obviously they wanted to create their own platform so that they had, they're some of the most talked about women in the world, but they wanted a platform where they could go direct to consumer. And I think that's another interesting approach and, about controlling the message. So when you're a brand and instead of having people control it for you, really being your own voice and getting that voice out there. And obviously that's part of what The Rock is doing. And we're seeing a lot of talent, personalities, and brands doing that right now.
Questions? Questions? Yes. Here.
Regarding discoverability, where do you think they're going to draw the line between being too invasive? Because I've noticed some things that have been recommended, say on Instagram or other platforms, that how do they know that I like this certain kind of food? I don't know. It just shocked me a little bit. So I just wanted to know where they're going to draw the line.
I love it when Google recommends stuff for me to buy based off of an email I got from a friend.
No, I know.
I'm down
It's
with that
crazy.
stuff. It's fine.
Or someone uses your browser and all of a sudden
Well,
some very weird stuff starts.
So many weird people use my browser.
Well, where does
Don't let your
discoverability
phone.
begin and privacy end?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a fine line, right? It's all about, at the end of the day, so Amazon does it well, right? So you go on Amazon, you have your profile, you start making purchases. They even know, this is where it gets scary if you start talking about it, but they even know, okay, you're pregnant, you might be needing this type of thing, and then you've just had your baby because they count down, okay, it's 9 months from now. But there are certain things when they output, some of those items that are super helpful. And if it's useful and helpful and actually personalized to you, more and more consumers are saying, make it relevant and useful for me, make it personalized. I don't want to see, that I'll never buy because I'm not in the car market. I don't want to see, depends because I'm not old. Those types of things. If it's not personalized, people get super annoyed. But I feel like if it's actually done correctly, in a very respectful way and additive to your experience, people are raising their hand more and more and saying, make it more personal, make it more relevant to me. In other words, like even going back to the Netflix algorithm, right? Like there are still improvements to be made that it will literally know what you will enjoy watching next versus giving you a whole array that you still have to scroll through and you end up spending 30 minutes and then you give up because you can't figure out which one you want to watch next. When that gets better and better and actually useful to you and not invasive but more progressed, I think that's where we're headed, and I think the smart people, know that and are using, whether it's data or the input that you are allowing. You've already raised your hand to Amazon and said, here's all my information to a point, allowing them to personalize it for you. People are saying Amazon's the greatest service ever. So I think when it's done right, that's the future.
Personalization is so key. I mean, and I think anything that you do, we were talking about it before we came in here, but audiences, I think, are getting so much savvier than they were. And listen, we're all busy. We want to be successful in our lives as parents, as brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, in our careers, in our everyday. So every outlet that we go to, we want to make our lives easier. So I think personalization is a great way. So, and you can do that within content. I mean, in our own apps, we're looking at sort of the next phase, and that's creating profiles for people, so that they know their likes, dislikes, and we can point things out for them. Videos they may not have seen. Bringing e-commerce into it obviously is huge for everyone. So yes, I definitely think you have to do it in the right way. Otherwise, we're all sort of creeped out by it. But if you do, I think it's something that can prove to be invaluable to your business.
And just to bridge onto that in terms of like what I do in my day-to-day, right, in terms of trying to develop marketing and advertising opportunities and innovations for big brands to do it right in front of consumer audiences, I think, again, that's where it becomes useful. Are we getting to a point, and I think we will, are we getting to a point where we're only serving an ad, and maybe it's featuring talent that's on one of our shows, so you already love that show and you're featuring talent, and it's a Chevy ad, but they know that only you are in the market right then for a Chevy truck. Like that becomes interesting. It becomes where you're allowing, your audience to know that, hey, we're going to be specific, but not overwhelm you, and do it in a place and space that makes sense. But I think that personalization can then be valid and interesting and additive to the consumer's life. So I think, again, for advertisers, they've got to evolve and find new ways to get their message out there. Even if you're not going to watch that ad, in show, what are the relevant ways in which you can do it? And I'm sure we've all seen it in show integrations that are good and not so good. Obviously, we're working on doing only good at Pop. But I think that's where you start to get really, creative. And like John was saying, I think that's the opportunity is like with this abundance of distribution, abundance of content, it means we get to innovate and we get to help marketers do a better job to not put the ad that pops up and drives you crazy and you put all the pop-up ad blocking stuff, like that's done wrong, right? And that means there's a need for innovation, there's a need to go to the next spot, and I think that's what we can do as content developers and programmers, help marketers do it better.
What can be a little bit worrisome is the concentration of the data, right? So when you look at platforms like Google or Facebook, because of the role they play in what the person in the audience was saying, I'm scared about how much they know. Well, they know because you provided that information willingly by going through those platforms. And at the end, Google knows that you paid off your car loan and now you are in the market to buy another one, and they know that you like pickup trucks, and then, these kind of things is unavoidable, and you might like it or not. So one example that is taken from my experience at work is we create set-top boxes for our customers, and there's an expectation that we integrate with YouTube, right? YouTube is a given on any set-top box. You need to have the app. Well, Google forces us to do specific things to be able to integrate with YouTube that allow them to take some of the data that was before owned by the operator, right? And, it's like pay to play kind of situation, and that aggregation will not get better in the future, so.
I think actually something that would make the consumer happy is if it was something that helped their life, like they got a good deal on something. They were going to go on vacation and they see an ad, but they get a coupon or something. Something that makes them happy, I guess, would alleviate the creepiness. I don't know.
Well, added value is a big thing all around. Again, I think, we were talking about earlier how, of course, we're all in sort of the content creation business in some way or another, but like the market is saturated with content. So how do you differentiate yourselves? And I think one of the ways is sort of, to use this term loosely, but membership. Almost like think of, what we do as membership. So you can offer them content, sure, and how can you make yours better than someone else's? And there are obviously ways to optimize it. But what else can you give them? So can you give them a discount on X? Do they, if it's a subscription model, do they get early access to this? Do they get, a certain percentage off of a partner's merchandise? So again, also going back to that, how are we making people's lives easier? But we're all sort of just looking for that leg up and that added value for people. So I think you're absolutely right.
There's such a proliferation of devices in the household now. In my household, with just 3 people, probably have 20 internet-connected devices, of which virtually on all of them you can get all the same media, all your products. Do you care what your product's watched on? Does it make a difference?
TV only.
Do you care if it's on a big screen or a little screen? Do you care if it's consumed in long bites or short bites? Or how do you think about, what's the process that you put in your day-to-day thinking because there are so many different devices in a home?
I think long-term, we have to care about what the experience is based on the device, or we're going to begin to experience brand infringement. If you shoot a long shot and someone tries to watch it on an iPhone and you barely can see the guy that you thought was great on your 50-inch TV, you failed the customer. And so you have to constantly be thinking about where I'm going to be consumed. A lot of our pieces, we shoot multiple rolls for the same event, and we go in the pre-stage process when we're front-ending with the reporter saying you got to think about how it's going to look on the phone and the small device, and then how it might look on the 50-inch screen TV. And we often will do 2 or 3 productions off the same thing. If we have something very compelling, we're going in now because the first instant is I don't care what it is, give me the views, give me the money. Long term, the customer does care, and I think that focus on quality, that front-end planning to plan for small to big, to 3D, 4D. 360s. We're doing a lot of 360 journalism now, and you really have to think about what you're doing with a 360 camera, or you just end up with a really bad experience. I think we're going to have to care more than we do today. I think the original rule is get it wherever you can. Now I think it's on the obligations of all of us as content creators to refine that process so that in each environment it works better.
Samir?
Yeah, in addition to that, it's also the technology aspect of bandwidth and delivery, of how you deliver that content out to different devices, whether in the home or on the go. I think you have to be careful of the type of content with the emergence of UHD, 3D, high dynamic range, better audio. People are looking for that experience across all devices, not just their living room devices, but even on their small mobile devices.
Question.
With the proliferation of channels and the amount of content that you're trying to create, is there a degradation in content? How do you decide what a minimum viable product would be, and do you start to limit the platforms that you want to be on going forward? I guess that's probably something that
Several
I
of you.
consider.
JR, you want to start?
I might not be the best person to answer this, but we create content for a broadcast network, but we also have a joint venture with Vice where we create content for brand Munchies. We create digital content. And again, it goes back to making it for the platform. And are you asking if the content's going to be like a lower standard on others?
Get it out across all of these different channels.
I mean, I can speak to that.
Consistently in content creation.
Right.
To perfect it, I'm saying, is there a minimum viable product?
I think you'll spin your wheels. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you can do so much with your resources. So I think that also is a huge consideration. You really have to prioritize, what platform is most important to you. If you're within your rollout plan, you're considering your own platform, web, and you want to do, mobile web, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever, you have to sort of prioritize based on your ultimate goals what's most important. And sometimes based on your resources, some things are going to drop off that list and you're not always going to be able to accomplish everything you want to accomplish. And I think that's okay. I mean, for me, from, a really traditional, I think, content creation perspective, I think quality is really, really important. But I think there's, we teeter. I mean, there's that line, like there's that fine line, because I don't want to produce something and put something out there that I'm not proud of. But sure, like sometimes there's just the hustle, and you gotta do it. And I mean, for me, especially working with talent also, sometimes like they just want to do something and you just have to figure the F out how you're going to do it. And you do. So, I think sometimes you might not put something out there that is your finest work, but I think it's all about prioritizing and then looking at your end goal and really what you want to accomplish with putting that piece of content out there.
To add to that, we're trying to make premium content here. So we have our same producers, executives that are making shows for ABC doing our digital content. So there was so much content out there that we talked about earlier. How do you rise above? So we lean in on making it the best content possible and then find it. And then hope people gravitate toward that. So we hope we're up there with what we're putting out there.
Yes, how important is OTT to you guys in your strategies? And secondly, are you piping anything that you're doing on Facebook, Snapchat, et cetera, back into OTT?
OTT, I think, will be essential. It's going to be the next generation's cable box, right? And so we have to all be prepared now. And there's another phenomenon, which is that this little thing that I carry in my thing and I use for work because I'm boring, but all my kids in my newsroom, this has become a DVR. And in the next year or so, even our app will, you'll be able to take anything on, you'll be sitting there and all of a sudden you can ping your television with a single click and it's going to come up and look really great on your television and you haven't touched a cable network or a box, not even a dongle. You're going to be able to do that. With instant projection from small device to big device. But OTT, with all this proliferation of content, somebody's got to come in and do what the cable companies did a few years ago, which is narrow the fire hoses down to some sort of pattern of what I may or may not pay for. And I think OTT will be the first solution. We're going to be playing in Europe, we're going to be playing in India, we're going to be playing in the United States, and we're going to learn a lot from that. It's a Wild West adventure right now, and we're going to learn from the data. But those OTT platforms are going to be the winnowing of what your business model will ultimately become. People will tell you in real-time data on their phone and on their devices what they're going to want to watch, just like Netflix figured out that House of Cards was going to work, and then you ramp up. So.
Yes, sir. I just have a follow-up to something that you said. What is, for each of you, your most valuable platform, setting aside cable, setting aside broadcast? What is your priority? What is your next most valuable platform?
I mean, for us, and for our company, for Whale Rock, it's the apps. I think it's something that, we are in film, we are in television, but I think it's something that we've seen an intense importance on. And, that's where we've really put a lot of our resources as well. So, for us right now, it's the apps. But also when I, say that we created, so when we debuted these Kardashian-Jenner apps, there were 5 sisters, so 5 apps. But there's really 15 things that we needed to launch with, because we launched with an app, we launched with mobile web, and we launched with web. So a lot of different products that we had to create and consider. But, we sort of took a chance with the app model, I think. It's an educated guess, but we also now look at a lot of data. So for us, it's great because we have these platforms. And then we also have iOS, and we also have Android. And so we really look at our usage and where are people spending their time. For us right now, it's on the app. So that, again, is where a lot of our resources are going. And, a new app that we're coming out with a celebrity partner, we're choosing to do iOS only. So it's going to be exclusive to that because our Android users, we're just such a small portion of users. And we were spending a lot of money trying to perfect that product. And, we just didn't see that it was worth it for us and what we're doing right now.
Samir?
Yeah, I do think it's actually, it's depending on the type of content. I think it's, long form content, not usually suits better to larger TV devices at home. Short form, maybe short form or more real-time informational, is much more mobile. And I think that's where there's a difference between how you get that content published and the time it takes to publish it.
Just to layer on, actually, I am relevant in this. So for Pop TV, we just we rebranded in 2015. So we're a new cable network in this day and age, which is really crazy, right? So we purely had to focus on content first. Of what are we programming? How are we maintaining audience and growing audience? How are we getting younger? How are we developing a slate that's really interesting and edgy and forward and pop culture relevant? As TV Guide Network, we were known kind of more as commenting on pop culture versus being pop culture. I think we're going to see from Pop next year, we want to become pop culture, what people start to think about and talk about and watch. But we're laser focused on just the network, the cable network itself and its programming. So we need to quickly think about and are thinking about, going what's our app strategy, what's our over the top strategy, how do we get included in skinny bundles? Consumers are making their own choices on which networks and programming that they are watching. I mean, if you take the HBO model, for example, purely subscription based, they're even going to see a change because you see people, I even had conversations with friends who stop their subscription when Game of Thrones is off and start it back up again when it comes back on, right? So that's not a maintainable model. So from even if you're looking at it from a subscription or even an app-based model, how do you keep people coming back and being there? So I think even for us, for Pop, we're young, but we know where the people are. We know what we need to do. So we certainly are super, interested and very much talking about what are our other platform discussions. And not only that, to be honest, we don't have a strong digital platform yet. But I think what's exciting for me is we're kind of an independent cable network, which can't be said for a lot of different people. So for those who don't know, we're 50% owned by CBS and 50% owned by Lionsgate, two titans of industry in terms of content creation. Really get to decide, from even a digital perspective, what type of partnerships do we want to create in order to have the content be in the right places and spaces. So if we create a great series, there's a few I could mention, but one that's really great for this audience is there's a series called Schitt's Creek, SCHITTS. So it's a great and it's successful going into season 3. We get to make some decisions on where should that be digitally versus we have to put it here because we're part of this bigger conglomerate of other network cable companies, et cetera. So it's really a good question even from a cable network side to be savvy and cognizant of what our strategy is moving forward, and we're going to be aggressive next year in that.
Yes, sir.
A question for you. Why don't you talk about monetization, particularly on emerging platforms and social? I mean, what are the sort of success stories that you guys have around business models and some of the challenges? John, you talked about how you're distributing on all these different channels now. But what, is it a philosophy of, build the audience and eventually the money will come, or how much of a priority and emphasis is that?
I'm in a for-profit company, so it's a big emphasis. Yeah, there's no gifts in this company, but they also are a patient company, and I think that's really been an important part of understanding. Listen, today, if you need to go make money quickly, the price per eyeball on traditional television still beats everything else combined. So when you ask about what's the most important form for money, if I can get one show on television, I'm going to make more money than maybe all that digital short stuff that I'm doing. For brand and influence and long-term gain of the audience and brand acceptance, Facebook becomes a really important platform. And now there's certain ways to start monetizing Facebook. A lot of people are getting into the Facebook Live scene, and there's a lot of money being thrown around there. We can make some nice money if we do good, meaningful, live quality stuff on Facebook. Lively and Musically, your kids are watching that. I watched MTV. That's their MTV. There's all sorts of monetization opportunities, and we've only begun to scratch the surface. I do think display ads long-term are in a downward spiral, and at some point they will disappear because I know my newsroom is like Weekend at Bernie's, and I'm Bernie's, and all the other kids are around, and occasionally I keep in line, but there's an absolute distaste for any interruption of the experience. So brand integrated content, the Red Bull experience is going to be incumbent, or what Fandango's doing. Fandango's doing some fantastic content that get me to buy tickets. That is where I think the future of very strong monetization in the digital space will be. And we're going to have to watch the data. We're going to have to listen to the advertisers. It's going to change 20 times. Right now, TV is still the king of revenue, but distribution, Facebook, and our other digital platforms are clearly starting to amass larger audiences.
Joe, you want to?
Yeah, I think you've seen early on Collective Digital Studio, which became Studio 71, YouTube and the ad-support model was first really our primary, focus. Then moving into the integration and sponsorship space, as you mentioned, and now looking at Facebook with their ad-supported model still being figured out and the monetization capability there. I think integration and sponsorship, along with live, is really the big play on Facebook in particular, as well as looking at things like Snapchat, the open rates for these sorts of creators that are on that platform, what sort of interaction they could drive there, and what a brand views as investment and what their dollar could be put towards that sort of open rate as valid or not. So working with those creators on what was once Vine and now into Snapchat, we kind of see primary in that space, at least for on the talent side with me, and now Facebook and integration and sponsorship and live as well. I think that's really where our big focus is turning to.
And just to add, I think it's also important to sometimes take a step back and look at the content you've created, and see if there's any other use for it. Can you bundle it? Can you upsell to linear television and sort of, change the format of what you're doing a little bit? So I think there are creative business decisions and approaches that you can make to sort of repurpose content as well.
I think that's a great point. We're now working with Adam Borston, who came over from BuzzFeed, and he's now working with our international distribution and licensing department at Studio 71. So we're taking libraries of YouTube pre-existing content, packaging it, and selling it to these new emerging platforms. So it's our creators are benefiting from years of hard work that they've made content that's already been monetized from an ad or integration perspective, now being packaged and licensed and distributed in different ways to these new platforms that are emerging.
Yes, sir. Along the same lines, you mentioned Snapchat to get into short-form content creation platforms. When you consider Snapchat, Musical.ly, Vine, even Instagram to some extent, is there a scenario in the future that you see any of these different platforms as becoming a viable monetization revenue stream, or is this, do you think, is going to stay, for that size of content, purely branding, influence, marketing, etc.?
I think you've seen the major corporate entities move into Snapchat in a pretty aggressive way. With their programming and everything, I feel Snapchat in a very large way is here to stay and will continue to emerge and be supplemental or on its own, even a new and innovative way to experience iconic, network programming in a short form, interactive way. And I think that's really unique for a lot of the younger generations and the creators that particularly use those devices to create content daily, working with those big brands to build audience, migrate audience to some of those corporate entities, or just create for themselves.
Samir, are users on some platforms worth more to you than users on other platforms? So a user on a mobile device versus on a computer, for example?
I think users are moving more mobile first anyway in general. So we do see a shift in retail to more towards mobile devices. People are on the go. People want to whether it's purchase tickets, whether it's to watch videos, learn about new videos, learn about upcoming movies. They are moving more towards mobile and being more on the go. But we value the devices as a whole. We don't separate them. We do create stats and everything, but I think just in general, consumers are moving mobile first in general.
John?
Yeah, mobile first for sure. All the engagement is occurring on mobile. We're about 70% mobile consumption right now, but the ad community is very quickly beginning to figure ways to make that mobile, which right now maybe on the financial side feels like your smallest part of it, into really stressed out. I just saw some technology yesterday where you can be watching Ellen, and she's wearing a blouse, and you like that blouse, and you can put your phone up, touch it, and you can buy the blouse in 10 seconds. Or if Mike Rowe is drinking a Bacardi and you feel like getting a discount on Bacardi, you can just click on the bottle. So this disruptive technology that we've been playing with from a content creation is just about to envelop itself on the platforms from an advertising perspective. And I think the ROIs on all of this are going to change as these technologies come out and make mobile more valuable. All the advertisers know they got to get a better ROI. In the ad meetings I've had, I kept hearing ROI for a new term, though, return on impact. I've never heard that before until I came to LA. I'm a East Coast guy, so maybe it's an LA thing, I don't know. But the ad firms and the advertisers themselves are now looking at two measures of ROI. Ultimately, how many leads did I get from this, but also how well did my brand begin to saturate into the constituency that I was trying to hit with it. And so we're going to have to think about that from a content creation perspective, and certainly our ad salespeople are too.
With all of the new technology, has it changed your rules of thumb in terms of the timing of rollout of creating awareness, particularly for long-form content where you're trying to market movies or films or anything like that where, you know, it used to be this space, this long. Are you finding those rules of thumb challenged along with the business models?
We have a show, American Gods, coming out on Stars next year, and we've been working with Stars on marketing it already for like a year ahead of time, because it's based off of a Neil Gaiman book. There's fans there already, right? So we're lucky we have a brand to work with. We care about the brands, we care about that show being on Stars for, again, 10 seasons. So we were able to start very early with that, and we continued and hit some tentpoles, Comic-Con, that kind of stuff. I think the earlier you start, the better, right? You have to start somewhere. So why don't you start today instead of 3 months from now? Because you just have to start from
And
zero.
you're not worried about the sort of saturation. I've been told, you know, that, you know, you can't do that because of the saturation. They'll be too bored by it and they won't be interested in it.
If you have the right, story to tell, right? If you have the right
I mean, I
stuff
didn't
to put
agree with
out.
that. I just,
I think you just have to start. We've done a few things at Fremantle that are little incubator projects that people started in different territories, and it's a cute little project. Now it's a legitimate business that's grown over years, because you just have to start.
Yeah, and I think saturation is just a given. I mean, just to do it because there's not saturation is saying, well, we exist, so let's not, you know, like saturation is now the norm.
Right.
So it is interesting, and especially with so many messages out there, it's an age-old question that I think everybody on this panel is trying to figure out, and we'd be making much more money if one of us figured it out on how to make your thing the thing that people pay attention to when there's so many messages out there. But I think absolutely, I mean, being aware that there's that many distribution methods, being aware that there's that many platforms people are viewing, you know, maybe even going back to the data and seeing, you know, where are the places and spaces that it's appropriate to tell these messages to this audience, and they would be interested in it, kind of the Amazon-ish level of trying to give people something that they would actually be interested in and getting them to tune in, is an art. It's not a science yet, so, yeah.
Since people access your content, a lot of the content, in different ways on the different devices, how do you help them or ensure that they stay with your content as they move around the various devices? Because it's not the most seamless thing right now, whether you go for an app or direct online, or a lot of different ways to get the same Fandango content. It's not easy if you're in a room, which I'm in often, where we're watching TV, the same time we're on our iPad, same time we have the mobile phone next to us, and you're moving around on the different devices doing different things. How do you convince people that your content should go from one to the next, as opposed to them getting bored and moving on? Spear, you want to start?
Yeah, I think that's where we really do leverage the social networks like, you know, Facebook, you know, YouTube, you know, Snapchat, others. You know, that's where we use it, and we want to make sure that the content follows you around. After that, you know, everything links back to our mobile apps or, you know, in-home applications, and that's kind of where we really kind of like bring people back afterwards. And we have a great following on YouTube. You know, we're converting that to, you know, other social networks as well. So, you know, that's really how we get that in front of people.
Bravo.
What we do is the ability to personalize. So, for example, one of the things that we have on our UI is we have the big TV connected to the main set-top box, and then we have the satellite application working, let's say, on your iPad or iPhone. And when, you know, the daughter of the household gets into the room, immediately the set-top box detects that she's in the room because the mobile phone is there, and therefore the whole experience of the set-top box will be personalized to her in terms of the recordings she has, or just using the data in order to make, you know, recommendations or things like that. The other important aspect of this, and I go back to one of the Jen's comment before about the importance of the app, is I think the change that the FCC going to make about, you know, opening the set-top boxes, that it was provided by your cable operator, and now those walled gardens will probably open up, and the app model will, you know, take on those devices. More and more we have consumers using, you know, not your set-top box, but a consumer-owned and managed IP device, like a Roku box or an Android TV type of box that was acquired retail. So it is important for these guys creating the content of thinking about these new models of consumption and how to be relevant in with this new environment, right? It's not the set-top box, the thing that is connected to the main TV itself is also changing with respect to what it was before.
No doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question?
Are any of you guys using artificial intelligence to guide your programming decisions?
To a great degree. So, and one of the things that we're very worried about when we launched, we're 12 weeks old, and I was worried about saturation marketing, which is if you just start putting all of your stuff into a fire hose and people get a lot of things they don't like, they're not going to come back to you. And, you know, the Facebook feed has become what the inbox was about 5 years ago, right? We got sick of getting spammed in our inbox and spam filters came in. When we market our content, have to be very careful that we don't send a funny Hillary piece to a Donald Trump supporter or vice versa. You want to target the content so that when you get into that premium location of the news feed. So we built an entire artificial intelligence engine, and we can spend $5 and get it out into a significant concentric ring of people through psychographic targeting. And so we don't care what your identity is, we care what your interests are, and then we target our advertising at you in Facebook and other social means, hyper-targeted, and one of the and we've seen tremendous success. We've been able to generate clicks, what I would call click leads, at 2/100ths of a penny for some of our best content, and you can compare that to what you would do on a Taboola or an Outbrain. It's that psychographic targeting. Don't waste a lot of money on things that people don't really want to see, because actually you pay a double price because now they're angry that you put something in front of them they didn't want. That's all becoming, and we have to control our marketing departments to do more of this, and we're the content guys in most of up here. We're going to have to control them to do that. But there is artificial intelligence is making reading suggestion, Facebook advertising, and ad lead generation much more precise and much more satisfying to the consumer. And I think that will be one of the revolutions of the next 2 years.
What about the programming?
Sure. All the data that comes back from our AI is coming back and informing us. Hey, people liked good news yesterday and didn't like any of your political coverage, so maybe you should think about that tomorrow.
Right.
That's coming in.
Yeah, data's you can't underestimate the data. I think, you can be data-driven, data-informed. Listen, as far as content creation, there are certain things that I'm still going to do because I think it's good for the brand, and I think it's something that's important to do. But at the end of the day, I'm going to listen to the data. So I'm going to look at, quizzes have been doing really well. Okay, that's sort of a no-brainer because it's fun content and it engages the audience, so we should be doing more quizzes. You see where the fatigue is. When you're creating videos, you experiment with the length and you look at the duration, where does their engagement sort of drop off and fall off? Okay, well, maybe you should be cutting down the length of these videos a little bit more. The data is really, really important, and you can't underestimate marketing. I mean, obviously, it's something we all do and we all use, and I think we will continue to do so. But you have to do it in a really smart way, and you have to target, because if not, then you are going to, saturate in the wrong way, and then you are going to approach people in the wrong way.
Samir?
Yeah, we started with a lot of machine learning around content to content, tying content together. And then we started broadening that area into machine learning, also into content to consumer or consumer to content, which depends on where you look at it. And that's where we're really finding a lot of ways to tie into marketing and ads as we develop that content to consumer. We already have a really good base for content to content analysis, and that's kind of where we're expanding in the future.
Yeah, there is a lot of analytics that are added into the different platforms, and typically we use machine learning in two situations. One is to do like forensics, analyze the data after something happened, and then figuring out things out of that data. And then there's the data that we treat and we use, just in time, that can feed, change in the programming and the recommendation just at the time that something is happening. So the two type of machine learning technologies are used on the data right now.
JR, I'm going to ask you something else. VR, how's that coming into play in what you're doing?
It's interesting because it seems right now that it's marketing, right? So I don't know if it's making revenue yet. Like we've all seen great VR experiences that are marketing something else. I've seen standalone VR stuff that's amazing, but For us, I think it's another content place the content place to play in, right? We're making content. How are you going to do it? We experiment with 360 cameras. You're talking about, you have to think about everything in that shot. Different producers play with those cameras differently, right? And VR is another thing. What is that environment to play in? And what will that become? Will it be more content? Will it become a digital extension of something that exists? I hate that digital extension term. Just, I think of it as more content. Will it be a marketing thing? Then will it become something people want to pay for? I think it has to progress a little bit. You get a lot of headsets went on the market, and people consumed everything in that marketplace, and they're dying for some more. And for us, it's a great place to play in. We're playing in 360, not so much VR right now, but we're adding stuff onto the content we're making for broadcasters and on our own, and then experimenting with it down the road. But it's definitely different. Our development team's looking at it's a different playground.
John, you're engaging in that space. What are you finding?
We are. I think from a journalist perspective, it creates a level of transparency and takes the decision-making out of or the bias or whatever that a journalist might have. I may focus on this object, but there could be something going over here that's more interesting to the reader and allowing them to swing around. I think it'll change traffic reports. I think you'll see 360 cameras on helicopters doing the traffic reports, and they're focusing on one crash, but you really care about 5 blocks over what's going on, and you'll be able to swing around and see your own traffic board in real time. It's giving a sense of control to the consumer that I can, whatever the journalist took me, I can go where I want in the piece. And we've seen a lot of good engagement on it. My favorite story to tell is the Star Trek Art Museum. We went into Star Trek Art Museum, and the original Commander Eudora, you can tell I'm not Star Trekkie. Our cameraman focused on her because she was doing the narration of the art, but we watched in our analytics, everybody swung the camera around and watched the old 60-year-old guys that were wearing nylon shirts with the Star Trek badges on it, and that was the entertaining part for them. They were interested in the audience reaction, gawking at her. We're learning a lot from the 360 experience and the artificial data that we get it from it, but it changes the experience. You're no longer hostage to the camera lens initial focus, and I think that's going to be the game changer for us.
I asked this question earlier and didn't really get an answer from a different panel, but I'm curious to hear from each different perspective, whether you're a brand new brand or a brand new brand on an established platform, or any combination of which. How do you think that VR is going to open up the possibilities, specifically in terms of engaging your audience, new ways of kind of refreshing your brand, and that interaction? So not so much here's VR, we can look around, got it. But I mean, specifically towards your brand, what's that going to do for you in terms of engagement, branding, the future?
We own a lot of game show intellectual property with tons of game shows. I think it can be an amazing game show experience. And as we look at that and how that mechanic plays, and that you have to just watch game shows on TV on a set, right? Then you can play online and interact in a certain way. VR is going to be a whole different thing. So imagine our game show development team just being able to play in that space. I think for us, that's a big game changer.
I think also too we need to be aware of mixed reality and augmented reality. So not so much being in a world unto yourself in a chair, but looking at this room right now with a set of glasses on, and you think Lily Singh or Superwoman, Logan Paul, any of the Rhett and Link, any of these major YouTube content creators that have such an intimate relationship with their YouTube audience, all of a sudden entering this room. Now we have a shared memory of media. It's no longer two-dimensional, and we're talking about media after the fact. And I think that's really going to be extremely innovative in the way that artists create content, and that we can do world building within a room such as this and look at things in a story sense far different from what we're doing now and what we're even thinking about maybe doing in the future.
Last question.
For everyone on the panel, so you guys were talking about, like, for example, AI and that kind of thing. At a certain point, things like that become standardized, and there are companies that start selling services along those lines. So, in other words, back in the day, people tweeted by themselves, and then all of a sudden all the Twitter and social media apps started coming out as social media services and whatever dollars a month. What are you guys seeing as apps and services and companies that are coming up that you guys are starting to look at, as well as ones that you guys really like, that help you guys do your job better, so that we can possibly use these? And like you were mentioning about that thing that's coming along, along the way. So what are the apps and companies that you guys are seeing that are selling services to you guys that are really helping you guys do your jobs?
I will say, I think Amazon affiliate is like a really great and easy way for all of a sudden I'm viewing YouTube content, even my past library, I could put a ton of links of all the products that you see in the videos, and I could propel my audience to click in the About section and find all these different links. So it's affiliate program, so then they're seeing a percentage cut of anything that they drive to Amazon for purchase. I think that's a really straightforward, easy, pre-existing, company and service to use. I'd also say Epoxy, I think, is a really great service that helps to forecast and program your social media postings, because alongside your YouTube or Facebook content, you want to make sure your Twitter, Instagram, these things are always on, and maybe there's some way that those are feeding into the major way that you're producing content on whatever mechanism or platform is your preferred. So I think it's 71 with our creators.
I mean, for us, we create pretty much all that we do in-house. So, right now we are working to integrate e-commerce into like the app experience, but doing it on our own. It's similar technology to what you were talking about. So, when you're watching a video live, you're going to be able to click on that shirt that you see, and then it'll take you immediately to an e-commerce experience right there in the app ecosystem. But, a simple one that we do right now is just all like affiliate programs. So, I think it's important to look at, what you're paid on. So sometimes you're paid on clicks, and sometimes you're paid if someone goes to Nordstrom, but then for the next 30 days, anytime they go to Nordstrom, even if it's not from your particular ecosystem, you're still getting paid on that purchase. So I think it's also important to look at the fine print and compare them, because you're right. I mean, there's a lot of them out there.
With that, we're out of time. I want to thank the audience. I told you this would be easy. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks for joining us.
That was fun.